right now from Inpex. Go up on the Facebook, Twitter page right now, see what they're all about. Sam Rosenberg joins us on the 84 Lumber Newsline. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm great. Good to have you here today. And the reason I wanted to have you on the program, summer travel season is just about upon us, and lots of folks, just as AAA, are traveling outside the country more than ever before. Delta, of course, with a nonstop service to Paris. And look, when you are in Rome, you have to act like Romans, but let's face it, most of us are there for just a few short weeks, as opposed to being people that are from that part of the world or wherever it may be. And we have people traveling more than ever before, going to Asia, going to Europe, going to Latin America. So you need to be able to protect yourself. So let's talk about some things that people need to do when they hit foreign soil. But before any of that, what can you help them with before they take off and hopefully have a wonderful stay wherever they're going?
Well, thanks, Rob. I mean, travel security is one of the areas of focus of our company. We do a lot of training with executives all over the country, companies that send their people all over the world. And I'm on the road myself probably every other week at this point, traveling, sometimes internationally. But for the most part, it's really a dynamic that is very understandable. The first thing you want to understand about travel is that, when we look at travel to Europe and some of the basic places that a lot of people like to vacation, whether it's Greece, England, Paris, what have you, they're generally very safe places as we can, consider it here in the United States. And your biggest concern is really just street crime, the same as you have here. But there's a lot of places in the world that are very dangerous. And most people don't realize how dangerous. One of the big destination places still is Mexico for travelers simply because it's inexpensive. But, when you start getting into Mexico, South Central America, you start traveling into parts of Asia or Africa, or even some parts of Eastern Europe and the Middle East, you start getting into some concerns and dangers that most people have never even heard of. Namely, one of the dynamics called express kidnapping. Most people are aware from seeing some movies back in the day like Proof of Life that there's this dynamic, this issue of kidnapping for ransom. If you're a high-value target, a high-placed executive or something like that with with a company that's got operations on foreign soil, that you may be targeted for kidnapping and then this long, arduous process of ransoming. But nowadays, there's this new intermediate step. And when I say new, I'm talking the last 7, 8, 9 years, which is very, very well established now in the criminal cartels and the criminal organizations around the globe. And what it is basically is this dynamic where instead of mugging someone or having to go through the labor and the intensive intelligence work of doing a kidnapping, what a lot of people will do, a lot of bad guys will do, is literally just grab you, throw you in the trunk of a car, and keep you there for a short period of time so that they can run up your credit cards, drain your bank account through your ATM card, and then either kill you or get rid of you. A lot of times people get raped or injured during this process, and the worst part is that if they, in this short period of time, say 24 to 48 hours, if they identify you as being a high-value target, then what they may end up doing is trying to sell you to an actual kidnapping for ransom group. So it turns into a much bigger problem. And the thing is that when we train people prior to travel, it's so vital. It's just like training kids before they go to college. It's absolutely critical life skill. And you can't just go around with blinders on and sort of in denial. So you have to be able to tune your situational awareness skills so that first and foremost you can deny opportunity. Anytime you're traveling, you can be aware of the pre-incident indicators of those threats and be able to identify them and avoid them very, very early on so that you never get targeted in the first place. Now, fundamentally, bad guys anywhere in the world are operating on the same rules as bad guys here, just the location changes.
All right, we're going to come back. Another segment on what you need to do once you've studied up or you have gone to livewithconfidence.com. That's what Sam does, or you've called the office at 888-433-2040. What you need to do once you are in a foreign country to protect yourself. It's Rob Pratte. Pittsburgh Works after the news at 7:30. Ron Nardis will be here from Charleroi Federal. Already have their website up on my Facebook and Twitter post if you want to check it out. Right now, Sam Rosenberg, Impex, is here. LiveWithConfidence.com is where you can find out more about what he does. You know, I was thinking before going to the break, and my brain kind of stalled there for a moment because I was thinking about Liam Neeson in these movies, Taken 1 and Taken 2. I'm a big fan of him. I love the whole action aspect of what he does. But in reality, as I have gotten to know people like you and Lou Gentile and John Hudson and many others, you start to realize that this stuff actually does happen. People look at it for entertainment, but let me ask a professional, someone who has really been on both sides of the Atlantic and you know security worldwide. What we saw in those movies, does that type of stuff actually happen? And can someone actually sit and watch a movie and say, you know what, I better watch closely because something like this could happen to me or a family member? Not to frighten anyone, but could that become reality? I got to believe it could, Sam.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who looks at those movies and thinks that it's just Hollywood fiction is completely off base. Now, the action stuff, obviously, you know, Liam Neeson being a superstar, you know, we all know that that's Hollywood, but the bad guy portrayal and the reality of kidnapping and human trafficking, to be honest with you, if it's not only real, it's actually downplayed considerably. It is such an enormous problem in certain parts of the world, and not just certain parts of the world. I should actually check that. It's actually a huge problem here in America. But, you know, overseas, it becomes a real issue. And people, you know, you have to know what you're getting into when you go into certain countries. And really, you asked me before what people can do. You know, research the countries, talk to experts, and not your travel agent, but folks who are in the security business who can advise you as to what the dangers are, and prepare accordingly. You know, decide whether you even want to travel to certain parts of the world, you know, with your family based on that. You know, I've written a book, as you know, Rob, on travel security called The Traveler's Guide to Personal Security, and it breaks it down region by region. It literally tells you if you're traveling to the Middle East, or if you're traveling to Islamic countries, or if you're traveling to South and Central America, what to understand and the dangers implicit in those areas, whether it's transportation dangers or taxi cabs or what have you. It really illuminates all those aspects.
You know, here's something else, too, you know, and I've learned because of, you know, dealing with reporter Betsy Howell, who's in Cairo, phone numbers, you think we have too many digits. Well, they've got a whole lot more in the way of numbers that go along with each number. Mobile phones work differently. Law enforcement agencies are different. There just seems to be so much information out there. Just kind of narrow it down. Give us maybe your top 3 on what people need to know when they go to these various parts of the world when it comes to being able to communicate, even in some cases, Sam, if they can't speak the language.
You know, I think that's a great question, Rob, and I think the most important thing, again, is doing a proper analysis of the country that you're going to be in first, because it's so different everywhere you go. Some areas have really robust and competent cell phone service, because there's parts of Africa that don't have electricity, but they have cell service. Or they don't have running water, but they have cellular service. So there's a lot of places that actually you can communicate fairly effectively, but sometimes your communication plan, your cellular phone plan won't work over there. So you have to make sure you have an international plan, and you can go over that with your cell company, but that starts again with researching the company or the country. The thing I would recommend the most is, you know, even if you don't have, you know, assets to call a security agency and get a third-party appraisal of where you're going to be traveling and the dangers, definitely go to the U.S. State Department website and look at their travel advisories. You know, the Department of State will almost always caution to a greater degree, but I think that's a very good set point. I think it's a good place to start, and travelers, international travelers, absolutely should register with the Department of State so the U.S. government knows you're there. If they don't know you're there, they can't help you. And the idea here is that everything becomes slower. If you get robbed, you lose your passport, you're going to have a really hard time. And if the State Department already has you on file as being there, and you know where the Department of State is or the consulate is in that country, and you have some degree of understanding of what you're getting into, you know, you are much, much better prepared to respond to anything that happens.
Let me ask you this, too. Because this is a free country, sometimes we forget they don't really see, I guess, the same way we do in other parts of the world. But on the other hand, even in hotbeds, meaning the Holy Land, and with obviously the Easter season upon us, many people would love to make a pilgrimage back to that part of the world. You know Israel and Jerusalem. You've been there. Palestine. You understand that part of the world. Should people still have the right to go anywhere, or in your opinion, no matter how much training, certain places should be off limits, Sam?
I think that depends on the person. I mean, I do believe that you can go to a lot of places. You can go to places that are considered extremely dangerous if you're prepared. You know, if you know what you're doing, if you know what you're getting into, if you've evaluated the risks, you've trained yourself in action plans, and you know exactly what's going to, happen first, second, third when you get there, it's certainly feasible to travel in even dangerous parts of the world. I've got clients and travelers that train with me because they're going to the Gaza Strip. They're going to extremely dangerous places. And the reality is that it is feasible to travel in those places. You just have to do it with eyes wide open and an understanding of what the dangers are ahead of time. What you don't want to do is, I remember during the Sochi Olympics, they did a story in a couple of U.S., this group of U.S. college kids that were going to travel to Sochi, and they went traveling through Georgia and parts of Russia. And the State Department advised them, don't wear American apparel, try and keep a low profile. They gave them all the wise, common advice that is really good advice to follow for anyone traveling overseas. And these guys said, we're not going to do that. And they just flaunted the fact that they were American college students kind of off on their own, and the fact that they didn't get victimized almost reinforced to them that, hey, all these guys don't know what they're talking about. The world's a perfectly safe place. You can do whatever you want. And in my world, I looked at that and go, boy, were they lucky, because they could have easily been another statistic. And, you just have to be aware. That's the first step. I always tell people you don't have to pay a huge cost to have personal security, but you have to pay attention. That's the price. Sam Rosenberg, INPEX is here, INPAX, livewithconfidence.com, or 888-433-2040, 888-433-2040. You can check it out at my Facebook or Twitter post right now. In the movie, he did not want his underage daughter going to Europe, fighting, verbally with his ex-wife, and finally let her go, meaning Liam Neeson. I'll be honest with you. I got to believe that someone under 18 should not be in a foreign country with friends that are of the same age, unchaperoned. Am I rushing to judgment here, or do you understand why my thought process would be that, Sam? There's no way. He knew that was a bad idea. That was just the most ridiculous thing possible. I mean, you're just sending the lambs to the slaughter. Is it really this human trafficking thing? And, obviously I've had my finger on the pulse to that because it is something that concerns me, and I read about it and hear about it all the time. Is that really the number one thing that we should be afraid of as far as traveling overseas, especially if our children are with us, especially young children, adolescents, early teenagers? No, it's not the most important thing, or not the most relevant for most people. What's really the most important thing is street crime. What you have to understand is that there is just as much violence and crime, and there are as many bad people out there looking to do bad things in Paris as there are here in Pittsburgh, maybe even more so. And, you've got a whole different set of rules that you're playing with regard to the legal system in a lot of countries. And, and in terms of the protection from the law enforcement community. So it's a whole different ballgame. And street crime is still always going to be your number one concern. The problem is that people go on vacation, they think they're in this beautiful place, and they think that they're untouchable, especially teenagers. And it's a recipe for disaster because they take chances and they put themselves in situations that they simply shouldn't. Human trafficking is just one element of concern, and it is something to be concerned with. Now, you don't typically see, in the vast majority of human trafficking, you don't see it being targeted to visiting tourists, but it does occur. And again, it's a subset of that street crime, where a street crime could easily go from a mugging to a rape, or from a rape to a kidnapping, and a kidnapping to a total disappearance. It does occur, and it's something that nobody wants to face personally, or certainly not with their kids.
All right, Sam Rosenberg, ladies and gentlemen, Impex, name of his company, livewithconfidence.com. 30 seconds. And is there that factor that if someone does disappear, you have a very short period of time before they are lost forever because of being on foreign soil? That's my last question, and you've got under a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's virtually no chance of you being found if you disappear in a situation like that, unless it's a ransom case. So, again, the objective is to know ahead of time what the dangers are and to scrupulously avoid them or be able to defend yourself should you find yourself in a bad situation. You have to be willing and able, and the willingness comes from the ability. That's
what he does best, ladies and gentlemen. He has got your well-being on his mind, as his company does, 24/7. Sam, of course, Rosenberg, Impex. Find out more at livewithconfidence.com. Sam, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.